The German Africa Award has been handed out to Dr. Daniel Bekele, the Chief Commissioner of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. An independent jury of experts from the world of politics and the media selected him from more than 30 nominees. The German Africa Foundation says Dr. Bekele is being honoured for his lifelong fight for human rights. We'll speak to him in just a moment, but first, this report.
This is perhaps one of the most significant days of Daniel Bekele's career. Ethiopia's Human Rights Commissioner is presenting an investigation conducted with the United Nations into alleged human rights abuses in the Tigray region.
Number one, the ENDF, EDF and TSF carried out attacks on civilians, resulting in...
More than 1 year after the conflict began in northern Ethiopia, Daniel Bekele hopes this report will encourage accountability as the situation continues to escalate.
I hope this report really presents such a unique opportunity to start a new chapter in the history of this political crisis. It's very worrying. The conflict is expanding, and we're receiving more and more reports of abuses and violations.
Before his current role, Daniel Bekele spent years working as a human rights activist and lawyer in Ethiopia. When Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed came to power in 2018, he vowed to end decades of political repression in Ethiopia, first under the Red Terror regime and later under the EPRDF coalition led by the Tigray People's Liberation Front. A difficult time Daniel Bekele remembers all too well.
I grew up at a time when, there was a brutal military dictatorship, and at a time when lots of people were arbitrarily detained, killed, beaten up, tortured, and I've seen it. My own father and mother also arbitrarily being detained. And then that military dictatorship was overthrown by an armed rebel movement, and it started an era of hope, but that also ended up in another period of political repression.
In 2005, Daniel Bekele was detained after he spoke out against problematic procedures surrounding that year's general election. He was released 2.5 years later and went on to become the director of the Africa Division at Human Rights Watch in 2011. Along his journey, he forged a network made up of colleagues, fellow activists and lawyers. Many of them became his close friends.
When they put him in jail and when they came up with all kinds of legal systems and so on to dissolve or to decimate civil society activities, I was very angry. But he's very calm. So I always admire that calmness.
A calmness which Daniel still maintains today, even as Ethiopia faces another difficult chapter amid an ongoing conflict and a fresh wave of alleged human rights abuses.
And Dr. Daniel Bekele joins me now. Dr. Bekele, welcome to DW and congratulations on the award. But this award has not been without criticism and allegations of bias. You were, after all, appointed by the government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who has recently himself been under fire for inciting violence in the country.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for that kind introduction. And I have to say, for correcting the record, I was appointed by Parliament. The National Human Rights Institution in Ethiopia is an independent national human rights institution appointed by Parliament. And I have to say that, the Ethiopian National Human Rights Institution is not unique in this sense. All the national human rights institutions across the world are state institutions, indeed as they should be, but they work as independent national human rights institutions.
OK, how does a commission like yours then remain impartial in a conflict like the one currently going on in Ethiopia?
I have to say it is definitely a difficult environment to do an independent human rights work when there is an active hostility going on, as well as such a polarized and toxic political environment as we currently have in Ethiopia poses a unique challenge. But this is probably, again, not so unique only in the Ethiopian context. We have had such polarized and toxic political environments and active hostilities going on, which affect us any human rights investigation work. But despite the challenge, my commission, together with the UN Human Rights Office, we have been able to undertake an independent and faithful account of the human rights violations happening in the context of the violent conflict.
Some fear that the recently declared state of emergency could, in fact, herald more human rights abuses. What will you and your commission be able to do to monitor that situation?
Indeed, any state of emergency situation puts human rights at risk because some of the human rights would be suspended and some due process guarantees would be suspended, and it certainly raises concern about the status of human rights in any country where a state of emergency is concerned, which is why our commission, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, is concerned about this situation, and we are fully mobilized to keep an eye on the overall human rights situation, even during state of emergency, because state of emergency does not mean a total abrogation of all rights, although there is a suspension on some rights. So one of the mandates given to the commission is also monitoring the human rights situation during state of emergency. So we are working to make sure that the state of emergency law and decrees and directives are not abused.
What do you see, what do you and the Commission see as happening in the crisis in Ethiopia?
It's a very unfortunate crisis. It's a fight, or it's a war between brothers and sisters, which should come to an end sooner than later. It has been 1 year, and over the 1 year we have seen some serious violations and abuses by all parties to the conflict, by all sides in the conflict, from killings, displacement, injury, sexual and gender-based violence, a wide range of serious human rights abuses that have happened in the context of this violence. So I am hoping that the recent concerted effort with the leadership of the AU Special Envoy and the support of other Ethiopian friends is showing us light at the end of the tunnel. So I am hoping that there would be a peaceful mediation and resolution of the conflict.
Absolutely. Dr. Bekele, thank you very much for your time. Dr. Daniel Bekele, head of Ethiopia's Human Rights Commission and winner of the German Africa Prize. Thanks very much for speaking to DW.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.